Hello, and welcome to O'side Demystified. I'm your host and council member, Rick Robinson. In this episode, I have two guests. Our first guest is a city employee whose focus is on a particular natural resource that some say is our most important. My second guest is our Director of Library Services, DiMento. CJ will provide us an update on the Oceanside Public Library. When we return, I'll introduce you to our first guest and the gritty subject matter before us. Well, welcome back, everybody. And I'd like to introduce you to somebody that hasn't been on the show before. And this is Jayme Timberlake, and she is the City of Oceanside's Coastal Zone Administrator. And she has a very, very important role here in the city. But welcome.
Thank you.
And what we always like to start with, because a lot of people may not see you or know exactly what you do. So would you give us a little quick update on yourself and how you ended up here at Oceanside?
Sure. So I'm a Carlsbad resident, but I've always been going to Oceanside's beaches. I'm a surfer. Got two kids who compete at the Scholastic Surf Series, and so we're always at Harbor Beach. We're always at the pier. But I got my job with the City of Oceanside following doing this work with the City of Encinitas. So I was the City of Encinitas Coastal Administrator there for about 4 years. And so when this role came up, I was trying really hard to get this job because I really have always come to Oceanside beaches to surf and to have fun, and just Oceanside's a great place to hang out. And so kind of have a big place in my heart for Oceanside's coastline. And so when the job came up, I went after it pretty hardcore.
We were very, very proud that we stole you from Encinitas. We talked about that a lot. But so as a coastal zone administrator, I guess the first question to ask you is, what specifically is our biggest coastal issue?
Mm-hmm. Well, in Oceanside, it's actually sand loss. It's that our beaches have been really shrinking for many, many, many decades. And there's kind of this consistent coastal management kind of issue that it overlaps with a lot of state and federal coastal management issues in Oceanside. So there's kind of these compounding problems that make our beaches shrink chronically every year. Most of the erosion loss has really been over the last 10 years. That's, I think, what most residents would also agree with, that we've seen really shrinking beaches for the last 10 years. But this has been a chronic issue of coastal management problems since the construction of the Camp Pendleton Boat Basin in the 40s. And it's just this effort of kind of putting sand on the beach and then having sand loss happen with storms or high tides. And then again, putting a whole bunch more sand on the beach and then having it lost. This kind of back and forth kind of ad hoc management of the beach sand has been our biggest problem. And really, it kind of gets back to even bigger issues that all of the region are experiencing, which is an overall loss of sand throughout the whole system.
And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Is this sand loss unique to Oceanside?
It's not. It's really, it's not unique to Oceanside. It's not unique to Southern California, to any area where on the coastline you see a whole lot of development. What happens is we've blocked sand from coming down through natural systems like river systems. And when we have that kind of loss of sand that's coming to our shoreline, then we have to get more involved in actually bringing the sand back to our beaches. So Encinitas had this issue as well. And they have bluffs, they have eroding bluffs, which is also sometimes we find that we've blocked that process from happening as well, or we don't want it to happen because, of course, above the bluffs is usually a couple roads houses. And some homes.
Train tracks.
Or a train track. Yeah. So we kind of have, so in any area where there's a lot of coastal development, we have this kind of loss of sediment making its way to the shoreline, which means that we have very little natural replenishment happening on the coast. And it means we need to get more involved and be more proactive about it.
Yeah, I don't know that well, I know I didn't realize how, I always thought sand always came from the ocean side, and you didn't think about what the rivers bring to us and the cliffs, that their role in the natural processes of sand on our beach. I just kind of always took it for granted. Oh, sand always comes from the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, what is unique to Oceanside is that we do have this federal boat basin that was constructed in one of our sand sources. So we historically have gotten sand from the Santa Margarita River and from the San Luis Rey River. But when the construction of the boat basin happened, like in the actual estuary mouth and across actually coastal dunes that were spread between Santa Margarita and San Luis Rey, those were all natural sources of sand. But when the construction of the boat basin happened, then we had a loss of that natural source. So that is kind of unique to Oceanside, that it's such a dramatic and nearby in proximity loss of our sand source.
And I would think our harbor also plays a role in that, right?
Our harbor plays a role in that too.
I know there's been a lot of efforts to deal with this problem over the years. We've tried bypass systems. We've had projects in place to try to deal with it over the years. But let's talk a little bit about what we're doing today. What has been your main focus over the time you've been here?
Right. So I've been at the city for about 2.5 years now, and I've been trying to really re-steer all of our coastal management practices. And I say our practices and I mean like the state interaction that we have. So with the Coastal Commission, and then of course our interactions with the Army Corps of Engineers, who has like a long history with them and trying to mitigate the issues that the boat basin has caused. And then on top of kind of steering those relationships from the city side to the state and federal side, then I'm also trying to get this pilot project going, which is called Rebeach Oceanside. It's an initiative that we started. Well, the city started in 2020 before I got to the city of Oceanside. But so that's a very unique, innovative project that we're moving forward with, which involves using an artificial reef and artificial headlands to mute the erosion processes on our coast and try and keep sand on our beaches a little bit longer. So mostly it will be enabling our retention of sand after we place the sand.
Right.
So not severely interrupting processes that are already at play, those coastal processes that were interrupted by the construction of the boat basin. We don't want to interrupt them so much as just kind of calm them down in certain parts of Oceanside. So when we do place large amounts of sand from a sand nourishment effort, it'll taper down that attack on the shoreline, and it'll keep the sand around longer.
And I don't want to go through the whole process because it took a long time, but I just want people to know that the things that we're doing or that you're leading now came out of a competitive process that we looked at many different ways to do this. And we settled on a company out of Australia, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who has had their solution is similar to what used on the Gold Coast, if I remember correctly, and which is very similar. I'm told, I've never been there, but I'm told that it's similar to Oceanside's coastline and been very successful. Is that kind of recap it?
Right. Yeah, we pushed, like me specifically, and then our project partners pushed to be more innovative with a solution. So usually some sand retention is done with things called groins or jetties. In Australia, they call them trainers. But they're basically long rock revetments that stick out into the ocean and interrupt sand process.
And you can see those on our coast going to any number of cities. You can see those.
Yes, there's some in Carlsbad. We have one. It's called the South Jetty.
South Jetty.
Yep.
Right.
And then there's some in Newport. Those are they call them jetties up there, but like I said, they're actually called groins. But so instead of using those, which are kind of archaic and they're not really there's not a lot of like design there. We wanted to push on innovation and get a new coastal management tool, if you will, for retaining sand. And so that's why we launched this design competition. And we ended up with International Coastal Management from Australia. And I think folks in Oceanside really like took to them. I mean, of course, the council took to them, and we got a 5-0 approval on that concept. But I think the residents in Oceanside really understood their process and their concept. And to them, to the Australians, this is a proven concept. It's not a pilot project.
Right.
They kind of have said that many times. This is an experiment. We know that this will work because we've done it on our own shoreline. And I got to go there this summer. I actually went and looked at the reef that our reef is going to mimic, and it's working marvelous for their coastline.
Good. I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So in our re-beach process, where are we right now? What's happening?
Yeah, so Rebeach it has been kind of in a quiet period since January, since early this year, because we've been doing a lot of background development of the project. So one really important thing that we have been trying to nail down is our sand source. So everything that we're doing with retention, it requires us to place large amounts of sand. So find a sand source, identify it, make sure it's beach suitable material.
Can you talk about that? Because I've had people, why don't you go out to the desert and just get truckloads of sand and bring it in? When we talk about sand, sand has qualities that we need, right?
Yeah, so sand offshore, we're looking for, when we look offshore for sand, we're looking for sand that is higher grain size. So meaning to say that the grain size itself is heavier, and so it'll stick around longer on our shoreline. We generally use a lot of the material from the harbor channel for replenishing our beaches annually, and that is low, like very small grain size.
Dredging. When we see the pipes on the beach, that's called dredging. They're clearing out the harbor mouth for safety primarily.
Right.
So boats can pass in and out, and then we get the benefit of the sand for a month or two, but it goes away quickly.
Right. And so if we find a higher grain size that is offshore somewhere, then we can put that on the beach and expect it to stick around a little bit longer. Even if we didn't have a lot of retention structures out there, it would stick around a little bit longer than using a finer grain size. So we are looking specifically offshore of Oceanside to find a sand source that will allow us to place these retention structures, the artificial reef and the headlands, along with sand. And that we want the sand to be locally sourced, because the closer it is, the less cost it is to deliver it to our shore. Going to the desert would be extremely expensive because you can only carry so many cubic yards of sand in a truck. And it's a surprising amount of sand that we need. We need about 900,000 cubic yards of sand, and you can get about 10 to 12 to 14 cubic yards per truckload. So if you do the math, that's a lot of truck trips to the beach, and that's a lot of encumbering on the beach itself. So you're really creating a big construction project out of the shoreline when you use trucks.
Now we do have a thing called scoop permits that we can, if there is a project. Sometimes there's a development project or something they're going to, if I understand it correctly, that it's the right kind of sand we want, and we can take advantage of those things.
Right. Yeah. So for instance, we have an upcoming restoration project that's happening nearby, not the large Buena Vista Lagoon restoration project, but there's a smaller one, and that will yield about 10,000 cubic yards of sand that we can truck to the beach, and it'll provide us some temporary relief in that area where we place it. Yeah. So offshore, we're looking to find this like locally sourced offshore sand, and then that'll also allow us to have a little more build some competition into the dredge that we can get. We can have maybe a smaller dredge or a different company than normally comes to our shore. Not that our normal company isn't great, because they are, but but we would like to have just a source that we can tap into easily.
And time flies when we do these interviews,
Yep.
so I'm going to kind of rapid fire a couple things at you. No. So right now we're doing the initial source, or not sourcing, but where the first site's going to be, correct? We haven't decided on anything yet?
Right. So yeah, since January, we've done this sand nourishment investigation, and now we're doing the siting analysis, which is to try and figure out which segment we're going to put, which segment of our coastline south of the pier where we're going to place the pilot project. And so there's 3 segments that we've divided up according to kind of natural breaks in the coastline. One segment goes from Seagaze down to Wisconsin. Another segment goes Wisconsin to Oceanside Boulevard, and then another one goes Oceanside Boulevard down to the border. Actually, I think we have Buccaneer as our second segment boundary.
Does the council make the final decision on where this is? You'll be presenting to us as council members, or when's that going to happen? Do you
November 13th.
Okay, so in November, council will get all the prior to that, we'll get all the briefings and feedback, and then we'll make a decision as to where. So it won't be you that makes it. We'll get the blame for wherever we decide to put it. Got it.
Well, we're hoping to give you an easy decision to make. We're really evaluating all the criteria that needs to be evaluated to see that a successful project happen in these locations. And so we're trying to make it as objective as possible and give you a good recommendation. Yeah.
Another question, it probably isn't a fast one to answer, but I always have to ask about costs. What are we looking at this project? I mean, is there a overall kind of cost for the project?
Yeah, so since January, we haven't done a lot of modeling. Once we do the pilot project siting, then we'll do modeling, and that will kind of dictate the design a little bit more, which will help us do a better assessment of cost. Because at this point, we're thinking $40 to $50 million for the construction of this, but that's a pretty basic estimate at this point. And once we get a little more refinement on the design, the amount of sand that we need, the size of the reef, the size of the headlands, the material to be used, all of that will kind of reveal a little more about the cost.
Is there anywhere in California that has something similar to what we're trying to do, that if people were a vacation or something, wanted to see what it would look like?
Artificially speaking, we have done artificial reefs for mitigation for like biological reasons. So to create a biological habitat, like a near shore reef habitat, so replacing habitat that we've had an impact on.
Right.
But nothing has ever been done in California to retain sand using an artificial reef. But I will say that the Coastal Commission, in their 2018 guidelines about sea level rise and how to adapt your shoreline for sea level rise, they suggest that an artificial reef be used in order to try this out, to try and mitigate sea level rise using an artificial reef. So that was 2018 when they kind of flagged that as an idea. And so here we are, 2024, trying to actually implement one of those reefs that could possibly help us abate sea level rise as well as chronic beach erosion issues.
A lot of people have heard about the Coastal Commission, but it's safe to say that we have so far a concurrence from the Coastal Commission for what we're doing?
We brought the Coastal Commission in very early on in this process. We had a jury as part of the design competition, a jury that would vote on the winning design. And though the Coastal Commission was in an advisory role, they couldn't actually vote because they had to oversee the project in the end.
Right.
They've been involved since the very conception of this idea.
Right. They have our neighbor cities and have been involved, so we alleviate some of their concerns and getting their buy-in. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, as I said, Jayme, this time will go by really fast, and for me, what you're doing is just fascinating work, and I'm very, very, very happy to have you here at the city doing this and leading our efforts. I hope maybe I can have you come back for another show when we have a little more progress and we can talk about what we expect to see. And last question for you though is, when do you think the public would notice in 5 years, 10 years, 2 years? What do you think?
A positive influence from the project itself?
Yeah. So
the community is going to feel this project right away because first involves about 900,000 to 1,000,000 cubic yards of sand placed on the beach in the area of the pilot project. But if you think about, our history on sand nourishment, that's way more than we've seen in the last 20 years.
Awesome.
So at one time. So the community is going to feel it right away. And then, yes, we expect to see good potential benefits from the reef itself within 2 years, 3 years. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being here.
Yep.
Everybody, we'll be right back after we shake the sand out of our shorts, and see you in just a second. Thank you.
KOCT, the voice of North County.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And in the time we have left, I have a very special guest, our Director of Library Services, CJ DiMento. And afternoon.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
I'm happy to be sitting here with you, Rick.
Well, your first time in, can you give us a quick rundown on so our guests know a little about you and how you got to where you got?
Sure. Well, a lot of hard work, firstly. So I grew up as a lover of libraries, as many people are. I married my husband and we moved overseas. And when I was there in Germany, we were able to start a children's English library, which was a really amazing experience. And I just really knew it was the direction that I wanted to take. I do have a degree in counseling and a degree in library science. So it's been a great fit for me. I love the role. I love serving this community in the capacity of libraries. We really are able to engage with a really broad group of people throughout the community, and that is our goal, is to serve the entire citizenry of Oceanside with services and programs and resources.
And to that, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one thing, that this weekend we were at a fundraising event for our Oceanside Theater company.
Yeah.
And you were called up stage for?
Well, I was really honored to get an award. It was the Sunshine Hattie Brooks Award. And Hattie Brooks, her nickname was Sunshine. And she is the individual who gave the building that the Brooks Theater is in to the city. So it is a city building, and Oceanside Theater Company runs the company there. And they do performances and music and song and dance. And as the city staff liaison to the Arts Commission, I worked closely with them, and they were giving me an award for really helping to highlight the arts here in Oceanside. Yeah. As part of that role, I love working with the Arts Commission. I also was really a big part of creating the city's first cultural plan, which is the OArts Master Plan for the Arts. It's a 10-year cultural plan for the city, as well as help to designate Oceanside as one of 14 cultural districts in the state.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. I didn't know that until just with this last year about that. That was amazing. Yeah. Well deserved, and you live up to the Sunshine name. I can tell people that.
Thank you.
You've been in the library business long enough. Can you tell us how have libraries changed in your career?
Yeah, well, I think down at the heart of libraries, they're exactly the same, right? They're a safe place for people to go to get educated, to create empathy. I think that's a big piece of libraries. Once we learn about others, we can better know where they're coming from and have a more informed citizenry, maybe a more empathetic citizenry. But your Oceanside Public Library really has changed dramatically over just even the last 5 years. I mean, we've grown exponentially. We now not only have 2 brick and mortar libraries, we have 3. So we opened a brand new library at the John Landis Community Center.
Yes.
It's a hugely forward-thinking space there. We have 3 city departments working very collectively on activating that space, providing resources for our residents, as well as programming and services, and of course, books. So we just have expanded. I mean, libraries really know that we need to be where people are, and we need to be accessible.
We have our downtown, our Mission
Yes.
Library,
Yes.
which is next to the police station.
That's right.
Landis.
Yes. And we have 4 mini libraries that
And
we
where are
have
those at?
opened, not, in the very recent past. So we have a mini library at each one of our senior centers, the El Corazon Senior Center and the Country Club Lane Senior Center. We also have a mini library at the Melba Bishop Rec Center and one at the Valderrama Rec Center. And in addition to those mini libraries, we have 2 bookmobiles. So large vehicles, buses that are out at the parks, the resource centers, every school in the community, as well as events.
And also people can probably order things online. I would imagine you have a online
Absolutely,
capacity.
absolutely. So our website is oceansidelibrary.org. You can go on there. You can order books. You can access online materials. Something that's really exciting that I want to share is that we have a program called Set Up to Succeed. So every Oceanside Unified School District student, as well as every Vista Unified School District student, can check out items both in the library and virtually with their student ID number. So again, reducing barriers to information, access to materials, brand new books. It's really important, and your library is very devoted to doing that for the community.
Now, if I have a book that I haven't returned in a while, do I get fined still for that? Is that?
Well, you might get a fine,
Oh.
but we don't have overdue fines for books at the Oceanside Public Library. Everybody does need to turn their items back in, but we don't have overdue fines because we really found that it was a barrier for parents to allow their kids to check out books. Because there is always a fear that, somebody won't get something back in on time, but that's not how we function here in Oceanside. We really want books in the hands of everyone.
That's great. And the Friends, real quick, can you tell me about the Friends of the Library? I know they have a presence.
Oh, I'd love to tell you about the Friends.
That's a whole show, probably.
That's a whole show. The work that these folks do, the Friends of the Oceanside Public Library are a completely volunteer-driven group specifically working hard to support your libraries. They're a wonderful group to support. They have bookstores in each one of the libraries. They also have a brick and mortar retail store, Jane and Evie's, which is right downtown across from the Civic Center Library. These folks do fundraisers. They sell books. They're out at the farmers market. They donate at about $100,000 a year to the library, and they fund all of the public programs that we do as a library system. And last year, we did 1,600 public programs. So the Friends are really an amazing group of people. They have a big fundraiser coming up.
Tell me about it.
October 13th, we have author T. Jefferson Parker. You probably have heard of him because he really is a big deal. He's a mystery writer, and he's going to be with us, and I'll be having a conversation with him, which I'm really looking forward to. Also, Jim Kempton, who is the director of the California Surf Museum, will be with us, and we'll be interviewing him as well. That's October 13th, so buy your tickets.
So that's great to know, and it helps me know when I have to air this now, see? So, but one other thing, and I always ask this of our directors, and I think it's important for people to know, what's the cost, the annual budget for our library system?
Yeah, so currently the library is general fund funded. A little over $6 million is our current budget for the library services. The library has about 65 employees. A lot of those are part-time staff. We do also through grants. Right now we have about $1.5 million in state grants or federal grants, both for arts as well as library programs. That funds our teen interns. So we have grant-funded teen intern positions. I'm super excited about that. We work to mentor the teens, work with them. They provide support for the libraries, implement programs and services, and it's really, they can get community service hours. Any teen that wants community service hours, come to the library. So the library is a pretty big operation here in Oceanside. We are doing home delivery where no other San Diego County library does home delivery. So we're really putting a lot of services out there for the community, making really good use of our city funds.
And one of the final questions I have for you, because I always ask about careers, is this a good career path for young people to consider in libraries, services, science, whatever?
Well, thank you for asking that. I think librarians don't often get accolades, but the work that they do in the community is very, very important. for our Oceanside Public Library staff, they are the most devoted and committed group of individuals I have ever encountered. And they love serving the residents. They love providing opportunities for the residents. So I would say I find it an incredibly fulfilling position. And I think a lot of other librarians do as well.
Okay. And we're running out of time, and we didn't get to talk about everything I wanted to, but maybe we can have you back in the future to talk a little bit more about some of our facilities and things going on. So CJ, I really thank you for the work you do, and all of our library staff and volunteers. It is, I would just tell our audience that if you haven't been in one of our libraries lately, swing in, check it out. They're very cool. They are, and you don't get a lot of right?
No, they're super active, and I think people will be really surprised. I mean, we have one-on-one tutoring for adults with our Reads Learning Center. We have early learning hubs for 0 to 5, our youngest residents. Really a lot happening at our libraries. So please come say hello.
So go to an Oceanside library, check it out, and check this out right now.
We realize you may not always be able to visit the library, so we are dedicated to bringing the library to you. Oceanside Public Library's outreach services include mini libraries, bookmobiles, and home delivery. At the mini libraries, located in the El Corazon Senior Center and Melba Bishop Recreation Center, you can discover and check out new and popular titles and pick up items placed on hold. The library's 2 unique bookmobiles can be found weekly at stops in many Oceanside neighborhoods and at community events throughout the year. The bookmobiles offer books, movies, computer access, and special programs for all ages. Home delivery of library books is now an option for almost all Oceanside residents. Simply place books on hold and library staff will deliver them right to your door. If you want the library to visit your organization or special event, find the outreach form on our website. For more information on library outreach services, schedules, or programs, visit our website at www.oceansidepubliclibrary.org.
I want to thank Jayme and CJ for their very important updates. And if you're a resident, a visitor, or work in Oceanside, you have to admit that sand plays a critical role in our city's fiscal and environmental health. We are fortunate to have Jayme Timberlake on staff, as her knowledge and dedication to the restoration and retention of sand on our beaches is essential. Over the next few years, you will see a lot of activity along our 3 miles of coastline, all with the purpose of restoring Oceanside's beaches. Your City Council is dedicated to ongoing improvements to our beaches, pier, and community facilities. I also want to acknowledge the work and lobbying efforts of a local group of advocates known as Save Our Sand. Thanks to their efforts, should our Measure X tax initiative be extended this November, funding for sand projects will be included in the annual spending plan. Always remember that Oceanside is a great place to live, work, and play. Don't let it be a mystery. Until next time, I'm your council member, Rick Robinson.